Without Richard Stallman, we likely wouldn't have had the free software movement, and he was at the forefront of some of the most important building blocks of the Linux world, things like the GPL licenses and GNU tooling. Even the admitted failure that was the GNU herd kernel is likely a big part of the reason why Linux initially did so well. For years and years, the FSF was talking about this idea of a free software kernel, and followers were clamoring for that kernel to exist, but they stumbled at every single step along the way. And then Linux came along, and whilst it wasn't exactly Stallman's plan, it was most of the way there. Enough of the way there that he was willing to put his name behind it. With that being said, Stallman is just like any other person and isn't perfect. And he seems to like to have an opinion on every single thing possible that is software related, even in cases where it is evidently clear that he has no idea about the topic he is talking about. Now, there are not many topics that fit that category, but there is certainly one of them. How many of you remember when YouTube DL got pulled down from GitHub thanks to a DMCA takedown notice by the Recording Industry Association of America, better known as the RIAA? This happened all the way back in 2021, and when it happened, I and a bunch of other people did videos on the topic. And we did videos because it was really, really dumb. It got taken down for the same reason why videos get taken down on YouTube: abuse of the DMCA law. It eventually came back, and all things were good. But the YouTubers were not the only people that talked about it. There was also an interview conducted with Richard Stallman. This interview is available over on Wikinews, under Wikinews discusses DRM and DMCA with Richard Stallman after GitHub re-enables public access to YouTube DL. As you would probably expect, most of the interview is about DRM and DMCA. And whilst you might not 100% agree with everything that Stallman says, you can at least see that these are areas that he's very, very well informed about. I think you should go and read this part for yourself, and you'll probably end up agreeing with most, if not everything. But for some reason, the last two questions completely strayed from that, and instead talked about snaps and Flatpaks. And I don't understand why. But what he says about them is kind of weird. There is a full recording of the interview, so if you want to hear Stallman say these words, go ahead and check that out, but he also speaks fairly slowly, so I'm going to read it instead. So, the interviewer asks, are you aware of snaps and Flatpaks that are used to install applications on GNU/Linux? Stallman replies with, I've heard of it, and I know they can be used to install non-free software, which of course, it's foolish to do. You shouldn't trust a non-free program. But yes, you can install non-free software. This has always been true, and the reason is with free software, ultimately you can do whatever you want. There's no way to stop you, so a free operating system always permits you to install non-free programs. Which may possibly be one of the most Richard Stallman quotes to ever be conceived, but I think we can all agree is kind of just waffling when he doesn't actually know what to say, because absolutely none of this is about snaps and Flatpaks. This is just generally about installing software. Like, any way you can install software allows you to install non-free software. If you just download a binary directly, if you use apt, if you use Pacman, if you use DNF, if there is non-free software available to be installed, you can install it. This response should set the tone for the answer to the second question. Next, the interviewer asks, the applications which would otherwise be available in the distribution repository, now the software developers are just moving towards Flatpaks and snaps, which for some reason the transcript doesn't include there. Stallman replies by saying, that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. It's a foolish thing. It's hard to trust these snaps and Flatpaks, and not only that, but those platforms distribute non-free software, so it's a bad idea to point to them at all. Where he's going with this is the only repos that you should use are those that only contain free software. You'll primarily find these on the free software distributions, things like Dragora, Geeks, Hyperbola, Parabola, PureOS, and things like that. Now the problem is the Linux kernel does have some non-free code. There are some non-free drivers that certain pieces of hardware need. So oftentimes, these distros are completely broken on pieces of hardware because they also make use of a Libre kernel. I don't like this idea of you have more freedom by having less freedom. You have more freedom by not having the freedom to install non-free software. That just doesn't click with me whatsoever. I'm of the mindset that you should primarily use free software, but you shouldn't try to hamper your system just to reach that absolute. I'm going to install the microcode, I'm going to have a kernel that works with my hardware, and in cases where, I have friends that want to use Discord or something, I'm going to install Discord. But that is my perspective, and I wouldn't expect someone like Stallman to agree. He is being consistent with the perspective that he's basically always had. Anyway, let's continue. And in addition, it means that there aren't multiple, with distributions. As distributions package a program, they will look at the program and thus they can fix things. If they see anything bad, they can change it. And thus, this is part of how users collectively maintain control. Now, I do think this is valid in a sense. Different distros may have different requirements for the way they want their applications to work. They might want to have different updates be cherry-picked. They might want to have a specific version available that doesn't update as the application keeps getting updates. It updates at a very specific time. This is why I don't think the idea of downstream packages is ever going to go away. There is always going to be a market for having a very curated distro experience. Also, there are distros like Fedora that has the Fedora Flatpaks repo, which does this with Flatpaks instead. However, that is not the case for every single application. There are a lot of applications out there which are just packaged the way the developer makes it. So why should there need to be a Debian package, an Arch Linux package, an OpenSUSE package, a Gentoo package, a Fedora package, a Void Linux package, and all of these other packages when they're just doing the exact same thing? This is just a bunch of wasted maintainer effort. They can focus on the things that should be different, and for the things that shouldn't be, let's just have a single source of truth that saves everyone a bunch of time. Also, there are applications which realistically shouldn't be packaged in a standard way. Things like OBS. OBS does have an official package on Ubuntu, but the reason why it doesn't have an official package on Arch Linux and a bunch of others is the official package includes some private keys and a bunch of other little things that cannot be left in an open source repo, so it needs to be distributed as a binary. By having that as a Flatpak, everybody can just install it and have it work the exact same way. And that's the other thing. Flatpaks and snaps are effectively a mini distro on top of your already existing distro. So when you install a Flatpak, it doesn't just rely on the Flatpak itself. It also relies on one of the runtimes you install, whether it's the GNOME runtime, the KDE runtime, or a bunch of others. And this runtime is going to be exactly the same regardless of where you install it. If you install it on Ubuntu, if you install it on Debian, if you install it on a 5-year-old version of Mint, if you install it on Gentoo. So an application developer can target that specific runtime, and it just works everywhere with no additional changes. It's not just the distro maintainers that benefit, it is also the application developers. They can focus on making the application, not focus on trying to fix the application on various different distros that just want to do things differently. Whether it's Bottles with Fedora or OBS with Arch Linux, where the OBS Arch Linux package has always been packaged wrong and will never be fixed. Now that was good enough. But this is the reason why I wanted to make this video. I've never installed a Snap or a Flatpak, and I don't think I want to. I wouldn't. I don't trust it. How do I know whether that Flatpak includes some non-free software? How could I check? I don't think they're designed to let people check. They're not designed for anyone to build the program. As far as I know, I could be mistaken, but if all everybody does is just install the binaries in the Flatpak, nobody's building it, how does anybody know if the complete source is available? This right here is the exact reason why you don't answer questions unless you go and read up on what you're talking about. So this is the documentation on creating a snap. There is a guide on each the step you need to go through to actually build your own snap. And that documentation also exists with Flatpaks as well. Nothing here is proprietary. It is all being done with FOSS tooling. The only proprietary part of the Snap toolchain is the Snap Store itself. I don't particularly like this, a lot of people don't like it, but Flatpak, nothing is proprietary, it is all open, and you can audit the code yourself. However, whilst nobody does it, snaps can be distributed outside of the Snap Store. Canonical just doesn't really make it easy to do so, so the idea of a third-party store just isn't really a thing in the context of Snap. You, as a user, can go and make your own snaps and your own Flatpaks, because this needs to be possible because that's how the developers do it as they're actually making the snaps and the Flatpaks. Let's look at a project that exists in both repos officially, that being the Firefox project. Firefox right here on FlatHub, and Firefox right here on the Snap Store. Here is the repo with the build file for the Firefox Flatpak, and here is the repo for the Firefox Snap. All of the build files are open and you can go and examine them. Now, another program, OBS, does not officially have a package on the Snap Store. The package there is a third-party package, but all of the build files are publicly available. Same with the Flatpak as well. Now, I can't speak for third-party Flatpak repos, but when we are talking about FlatHub, all of the build files are going to be available. Let's check something like CPU-X. If we scroll down to the bottom and go to the link section, there is going to be a link to the manifest. The manifest is the build file, and you can see how the application is being built, and if you want to build it for yourself, you can go and do so. Let's grab something proprietary like, say, Spotify, okay? This application, down the bottom here, manifest, it is available. Now, Spotify is a proprietary application, so obviously Spotify is not being compiled here, but everything else is publicly accessible to see. As for the Snap side, things like Firefox and OBS are kind of the exception. When you have a project like Blender, for example, there is no link on here to get to the Snap build files, so a lot of projects, even FOSS projects, don't have the Snap build files available. In that case, you can probably say there is no way to audit the Snap, maybe it has some things in there that I don't really know about, and I understand not trusting snaps. But that does not at all apply to applications on FlatHub. But it is fair to say that nobody's building it. But that's the case with most people installing most applications on Linux. Unless you're on something like Gentoo, most people are installing binaries, so even if the build files are available, even if the source code is available, you don't know that that's what you're getting if somebody else is building the application for you. That's even true on these free software distros. I am so very happy that both of these quotes exist. They are absolutely incredible, and I've seen them posted around a bunch of times. But this is a good example of why just because you know a lot about software in a lot of contexts, it doesn't mean you know a lot about software in every context. This is one of those areas where Stallman just a little bit slips up, and it makes him sound like he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. As I said earlier, Stallman knows a lot about a lot of things, but this is not one of those areas. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have you ever seen these quotes posted? I know people like post them on Mastodon and things like that every so often as like a dunk on Stallman, but have you seen the entire quote? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the LiberaPay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I'm done stolen. Money that I don't accept.